Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us today for the second session of our CEP work group, the power of partnerships and strategic groupings to maximize ISP. My name is Jonelle Williams-Pagan. Next slide, please. Today, we have a great agenda for you guys. We have a Groupings 101 presentation, just the basics on groupings, and two amazing guest speakers, Nikolaj Baer, project lead for Meals Counts, and Agnes, the director of Child Nutrition Services at Garden Grove. Then we'll have a couple of minutes for Q&A, some closing remarks. We are only recording the presentation portion of this session. And also, if you want to rename yourself, just click on your profile picture. There should be 3 dots. If you right click on that, there's an option to rename yourself. And please, we encourage you to turn on your cameras if you want to, and just be ready to engage during the Q&A section. Next slide, please. Just wanted to also give a shout out to all our team members within the CEP workshop group. Daisy Minguio Pinon, our associate director, Robin Hernandez, our school access manager, Tommy Lee, who does everything operations and tech and behind the scenes, and Paige Pernacki, who works for our Center for Best Practices and will be leading the Groupings 101 presentation. Next slide. So this last year, we did a CEP grant cycle. So we wanted to provide funds for any district that was starting CEP or expanding CEP. So this is something we also want to do this year, but only if it is of interest to districts, and this is something that you want to do or get funding for. This would cover specifically, any marketing needs that you have, any administrative costs, any type of staff training, or even supplies and equipment for your expansion of CEP, or any needs that you will anticipate you may have, barring that CEP could increase participation in your school programs. So I see a few responses here. I'll give you guys a minute to complete, and then we can close the polling, Tommy. Okay, a couple more seconds, then we'll close it out. All right, I think we are good. All right, thank you so much. All right, now I will introduce Paige Pernacki, who will be going through Grouping 101 with you. Paige, take it away.
Awesome. Hi, everyone. My name is Paige. I work with our wonderful California team. I sit on our national office, though, and I will be doing a quick and dirty Grouping 101, and feel free to reach out to me or any member of the California team if you have further questions about what I'm going to present. Next slide. So if you missed last session, just a quick 2-sentence explanation of what community eligibility provision, or CEP, is. So CEP enables high eligibility schools to provide breakfast and lunch to all students at no cost. Schools or groups of schools must have an identified student percentage, or ISP, of 40% or more to operate CEP. And CEP is a 4-year cycle where you lock in your ISP for 4 years. However, if your ISP goes up over the course of 4 years, between year 1 and 4, you can always re-up that cycle. So you're not fully locked in if you are going to increase that ISP. And why that's important is because, next slide, Your ISP indicates your reimbursement. So how it's calculated is your number of identified students divided by total student enrollment times 100. Next slide. And the way we identify students is, what we mean by that is identified students are categorically eligible and directly certified for free school meals. So students are identified by the participation or a household member's participation in these programs: SNAP, TANF, FDIPR, or Medicaid. And eligibility in these programs extends to siblings and other household members. In addition, children who are in foster care, experiencing homelessness, in Head Start, early Head Start, and or youth with migrant parents are all part of the ISP identified students. However, in these last group, their eligibility does not extend to siblings or other household members. Next slide. And as I said, your ISP indicates your reimbursement. So we want it high, right? So the two categories of reimbursement are free and paid. It's unlike the free reduced paid structure of normal NSLP. So your free reimbursement is calculated by your ISP times 1.6. That 1.6 is a modifier set by USDA, and it's supposed to capture the extra numbers of free reduced meal applications that you would be identified through that method of identifying students. And then the paid rate is just 100 minus what you're getting at the free reimbursement rate, your ISP times 1.6. So you'll see examples kind of at various categories of ISP below. So at 40% times your 1.6, the number of free meals, or the percentage of free meal, the percentage of meals reimbursed at the free rate, it would be 64%. And then percent of meals reimbursed at the paid rate would be 36%, and then so on as you go through those ISP percentages. Next slide. So grouping is a fantastic way to maximize reimbursement. The 40% threshold may be met by an individual school, a group of schools within the district, or the entire school district grouped as one. The grouped ISP is the total number of identified students in the group divided by the total student enrollment of the group.
I forgot
schools
I was
can
going to go
maximize
into my
reimbursement
webinar.
by testing
So if that mom calls, if you could just take the phone number, because I'm in that.
Grouping high ISP, high enrollment schools with lower ISP, lower enrollment schools can help maximize school participation and reimbursement. Next slide. So here's an example. In school A, we have 60 identified students with an enrollment of 120 with a 50% ISP. School B, you have 38 identified out of 100, 38% ISP, and school C, 150, 200 enrollment, 75% ISP. Technically, school B by itself is not eligible to do CEP. However, if we grouped the schools, we would have 248 identified students, 420 enrolled, which leads to a 59% ISP. And so that means all three schools can be grouped and participate in CEP and provide meals to all students at no cost at a 59% ISP. So 59 times 1.6 is your would be the reimbursement rate. And what we'll be talking a lot about today is a fantastic tool so that you don't have to do all this math, which is the meals count grouping calculator. So as you play around with these tools that we're going to show you today, just remember, groupings can maximize reimbursement and school participation in the program. So consider ISP by school, enrollment by school, participation by meal type and reimbursement category, and then look at schools that have historically had high meal debt accrued by year. And if you need help, we're always here. And one last thing I forgot to mention on a previous slide is what we like to call the magic ISP, which is 62.5. And that we call it magic because 62.5 times 1.6 means all of the meals are reimbursed at the free rate. And I will pass it back to Jonelle.
Thank you, Paige. So now we have Nikolaj Baer, who is the project lead for Meals Count. Nikolaj, we're ready when you are.
All right. Hi, everyone. My name is Nikolaj Baer. I am with Open San Diego, which is a volunteer group. And I'm going to talk a little bit about Meals Count, which is a project that Open San Diego volunteers have created in conjunction with No Kid Hungry, as well as Nourish California and San Diego Hunger Coalition. It's been under development for the last couple of years. So it's definitely been out there, and we've been trying to refine it and just getting the word out for people to use. Next slide. So to talk specifically about how Meals Count works, sorry if I'm not being loud enough here. Can everyone hear me now? Maybe a nod from anyone if you can hear me.
Nikolaj.
Okay, okay, good, all right. So I'll try to speak louder. So the way Meals Count works is it takes in your school level data. So each row would be a school's information. And then really what we're doing is this grouping calculation of which schools to group together. We're just doing this at scale. So we're just running through lots of combinations using different algorithms to try to maximize and find the best possible combination. And in the end, we provide a maximum reimbursement recommendation based upon the schools that you selected. And at that point, you can also adjust if you have some specific cases that you need to adjust to. And so the classic example of that is we had one school in San Diego County called Fallbrook. They have two schools on Camp Pendleton military base that were fairly low ISP, but they just didn't really see a possibility of rolling it out without including those schools as part of CEP program, just in terms of how their district is organized. So they wanted to make sure that they found the best scenario with those schools included. And there's lots of different scenarios that we've worked with different districts in the past to help them kind of work around. And definitely that's something that we're always open to helping any district with. Next slide. All right, so here's kind of the quick extension on what Paige has so well demonstrated to kind of talk about just why the grouping matters when it really comes down to not just having a grouping, but looking for the best grouping. So here's a first example. We have 4 of those schools represented by those different gray boxes there, and there are 2 of them are at 40% and 2 of them are at 85% ISP. Now, as Paige said, that the over 62.5%, everything above 62.5% already gets the maximum benefit. So anything we have above 80% or 62.5% is almost kind of wasted effort in the sense that we can share that. So next slide. If we reorient these groups the other way, we actually bring the entire set of all 4 schools above that 62.5% threshold where everyone gets the maximum reimbursement. Next slide. So here's a practical example for Oceanside Unified. These are just 2 different scenarios with the same schools being submitted to the USDA in just 2 different organizations. Basically, one we ran for 1,000 iterations, the next one we ran for 20,000 iterations, finding the better one. And you can just see the difference here. And this isn't guaranteed, but in this case, we did see a 13% increase. And I've seen everything from 2% increase to to 20% increase in based upon how things are organized in those grouping scenarios. So there's a real potential for a significant benefit in doing an optimized grouping versus just doing what you think might be good, or what running a couple scenarios and so on. And again, this also is a scalable thing. So if you have 4 schools in your district, you're probably going to be able to figure out the one of whatever 10 combinations that works. We found that after 12 schools, it pretty much explodes. You can't even run it on a computer without spending a lot of time. We have to use special algorithms to do that. So as soon as you get past 4 or 5 schools, really having Meals Count to help you is a big benefit. All right, next slide. All right, so next thing I'm going to do is I'm actually share my screen here, and I'm going to go through and do a quick example on Meals Count. It's all web-based. And if I didn't mention before, but it is a free tool. It's 100% volunteer supported. So feel free to use it as much as you want, and please do. And if you have any questions, everything is free and available to everyone. So here I'm going to share my screen. Hide this poll. Okay, hopefully everyone can see my screen now.
Yes, you're good.
Shout if I can. Okay, thank you. To get to Meals Count, and I encourage you all to do this with me, you just go to mealscount.com on your web browser. Once you're on here, as you can see, there's this homepage. The first thing you want to do is you want to go to Find Your District right here on the top navigation. Clicking on Find Your District you'll see all the states. I think everyone here is in California, but even if you're not, it works for the entire country. You can click on California. At this point, it's going to load up a page listing all the districts. Now, the data we have in here, it's important to know the data we have here is based upon the FRAC CEP database. So this is the districts that we know of. You can, if you have a district that's not listed here, you can click on custom district and just add the schools yourselves. But our hope was to save people time by getting a district listing that's close enough to what you've got going on based on the last database from 2020-2021 school year. We've also pre-filled not only the schools, but also the enrollment numbers. Again, those aren't going to be what enrollment numbers you have for the coming year, so you will need to update that information, but at least get you close to it, so maybe you can have a good starting point. So we're going to go ahead and find your school district. The quickest way to do this here is to type, and it does a quick search. I found one that's fairly quick here because it's only 8 schools, but hopefully everything is there. So once you see your school district, you click into that. So it's going to have a quick summary, a district code, the district-wide ISP. This is just a starting data, so this is not your actual ISP. This is based upon the directly certified students from the FRAC CEP database, just as a starting point. We do have additional things such as your NSLA rate and whether or not you're SFA certified. So those are items that you might need to edit there as well. Scrolling down, you will see that you get your full listing of schools here. It's grayed out because we haven't added the critical data yet. You will see that you've got enroll and eligible and so on in there. So the first step is to click this edit button here on the top left. When you click the edit button, at that point, all of the schools will become editable here. So you can go in here, you can edit the total enrolled for your expectation, the total eligible, and then there's the breakfast and lunch average daily participation. These are actually really important numbers. It's really easy to just hit submit in here and get an optimization without setting those, but the reimbursements are tied to the actual meals served. So then we've seen that there's a lot of variation across different schools and districts in terms of what the actual daily participation is. So we want to know how many meals are being served and how many people are actually, how many kids are actually eating meals, both breakfast and lunch, to get the best possible grouping as we can. This can be not always easy to get all the data in there. So for the sake of this presentation, we have, and for also for kind of sake of exploration, we have a set as percentage of enrolled, which lets us kind of streamline this process. So I'm just going to throw in some numbers here. I'm going to say, 25% of kids are eating breakfast and 85% of kids on average daily participation are eating lunch. I'm going to apply that and it's going to actually fill in. So another important note is that these numbers here are the actual counts on a daily level, not the percentages. I have seen some support requests, people come in and say, they put the percentage numbers here, but we actually want to see the counts. So you'll see this is 82 and 280, and those are percentages of the total enrolled. Another important note is the total eligible here. This is actually total identified students. To be honest, I was thinking about this when Paige was explaining it. I'm like, why does this say total eligible? So that might change to say total identified students in the near future, because I don't know why we're using that terminology, but that's just an important note there. Continue on the severe needs. So if you do have a severe needs school, check that. That does change the rates of reimbursement a little bit. The next column here is include an optimization. So there are circumstances where there will be like charter schools and other schools in here. You can either remove the school row by clicking remove, or you can uncheck, whoops, I just swiped on this computer and went jump there, apologies. So I'll go back here again and I will hit edit. I have to go back to what I was just doing. 25, 85. So let's see if I can do this without swiping. So including an optimization, this basically says just ignore this school, don't include it when we're doing our calculation. So it'll still show the school in the row, it just won't use it for the algorithm at all. And the last one at the bottom here you'll see is add school. So if you did have a school in here that was not listed in this initial list, you can add that school in here by hand and fill in the information for that. So finally, once this list matches what you're looking for, and again, you can do this as many times as you want, so don't worry if you have to get perfect the first time. Then you can hit submit here. So at this point, it's going to pop up. It can take up to, for a small district, as you see, it's pretty instantaneous. For larger districts, 13, 15, 20, 50, 100, 250, like we have in San Diego, or even LA, which will take a good 8 minutes or something like that. It does take longer to run the full optimization, but in the end, it will pop back here and tell you, and it'll show your groupings here. So in this case, you see that we have two groups. We have the first group. This is not the ideal example. I just grabbed this one this morning, but you see the first group is the one that it's grouping together, and the second group is actually $0. So we're not submitting the second group to CEP. And so that's how you get this set up here. So at this point, you can either export to CSV. So I'll do that right here, and that's going to export a comma separated values thing, which is Excel compatible. So you can hit download, and it's going to download, and you can see here that you can see that this is this district here, the CSV file right here. And actually, I'll open this up so you can all see it. And so you can see here in this, it's just an Excel spreadsheet. It's going to show you each of the row. It's going to have the district, the school ID, and it's going to have this group column here. And that's where it's going to list all the grouping numbers. So basically all the ones that are group 1 are going to say group 1 on this column. All groups that are going to be group 2, it's going to group 2 of this column. And it's going to have a bunch of different, it's going to have all the other total eligible, total enrolled, the breakfast and lunch ADP, and so on here. And then finally, it's going to have estimated school reimbursement for this column, and that's going to show the total reimbursement. I think this is the daily. No, this is the annual reimbursement number here, and that's based on 180 days of school days. All right. So the next thing is that there isn't any way to save this this work on the website. Instead, you really need to export a spreadsheet for each scenario you run and save that. So each time you run a different scenario and you want to save that, just export it to a CSV file, name it appropriately, and that's your the thing to save. Now, then after you do that, if you want to share with somebody, you have to send them the spreadsheet, and then they can hit import if they want to go in there and try to run the numbers themselves. And they can open up the downloads here, their files here, and they can actually drag and drop the file right here. It should pop up like that. And then hit import, and it'll say, okay, I imported 8 schools. Then you just close this window and then hit edit and submit again, and that will rerun the optimization, as you can see here. The last part is going to be that you can actually edit this. So as I was talking about in the scenario with Fallbrook, maybe I want to see what would happen if this Coolidge Elementary is in group 1. So I've essentially just forced that through. Sadly, that makes no one here CEP eligible. So I can see that I can actually hit my history here, and it's going to show the original revisions that I had. I can just go back to load one of those. It'll keep all the revisions in my browser history. If I close my browser and come back later on, that's not necessarily going to be there, or on a different computer. It's just during your session, it's going to hang on to that information right there. And then so you'll be able to say, okay, now I want to go back to that previously, and I can see this one right here. And then if you really want to start over, you can hit start over. That's going to clear out your entire breakfast ADP and lunch ADP, any custom numbers you've put into the total enrolled and total eligible as part of your projections. I guess almost done here. My last kind of notes are going to be just in terms of this, getting this total enrolled, total eligible, breakfast and lunch ADP numbers. So these are definitely projections based upon the data. I think maybe the other members on this call talk a little bit about sort of coming up with those numbers in terms of different scenarios. Definitely with the ADP numbers, it's really a projection of what you expect the participation to be in the coming school year. Obviously, it's a guess, not an absolute. But I think hopefully this year has been closer to what we would expect, because we have seen in the past when schools adopt CEP, there is an increase in that daily participation. So you can actually project an increase on that. But I think that this year with the universal school meals, it's probably pretty close to what you're seeing in terms of the schools, what they've been doing. So on that, I know that was a lightning tour. My last note is going to be that if you have questions, we do have an FAQ, but we also have a contact form. And we're very good about reaching back to us. Most likely it will be me who will contact you back. So if you have any questions, if you're running into errors, if you just want us to run your sheet for you and you're not sure if you got it right, please just send in a contact form. We'll get back to you in a day or two, and we'll take a look at your numbers. If you're a larger school district with over 40 or 50 schools, you should just submit this anyway, because we can actually run a longer, more exhaustive search and sometimes squeeze some extra percentages out in terms of optimization and reimbursement. So please just send your information. We're happy to work with you on any special needs that you have to do this, and the team is available to help. So I guess with that, I'll I'll turn it back to, I don't know if we want to do questions right now or if my time is up.
Nikolaj, we have 2 questions in the chat, but what we'll do is save that until after Agnes goes. Can we pull up the slides again? Thank you. So our next guest speaker is Agnes Leahy of Garden Grove, and she'll be going into partnerships and how that helped her maximize her ISP.
Hey, Jonelle. Hi, everybody. Thank you for having me here today. Like Jonelle said, in my portion, I will be sharing with you on how we worked on increasing our ISP by working with various partners within and outside of our school district. Next slide. I will be sharing with you our journey, which started in 2017-2018 school year. At the time, we were learning about Community Eligibility Provision Program and started to calculate our ISP for each of our 67 school sites. We found that 55 sites qualified and 12 sites that are not qualified, with either meeting the minimum of the 40% ISP or somewhat in the middle, and a handful of our sites that have a high ISP. And the one that was not qualified had a pretty low ISP as well. We also did a financial analysis to see if we implement CEP either by site or as a whole district and see if that would work for us. And unfortunately, the result was not very good for the department. So after looking at all the analysis, talking to and having many conversations, we have decided not to implement CEP only because the district had decided we will implement the program either all or nothing. However, we did decide to implement one pilot site. We selected a site that has a very high ISP to see how the process will work for us. In the meantime, we start reviewing more closely on how we can identify or certify more students, and if we have captured all the eligibility based on what Paige had reviewed earlier, the Medicaid, FDR, PIR, homeless, Head Start, and additional foster student that's not already included in our DC list. Next slide. Going back to our drawing board, we asked ourselves, what have we done well? What did we miss? How can we bring our DC numbers up so we could be able to use the CEP program? So we already know that we are downloading a list from our CalPAT extract once a month. So this list is pretty solid. Then we look at our county list, and we had noticed that we're not downloading our county list as often as we would like. So we were getting our county list from our OC Department of Ed at that time. And we had reached out to them and asked if we were able to get the list more frequently. And at the same time, they were informing us that they were no longer able to supply that list for us. So in our county, in Orange County, we have an OC Food Service Director meeting every quarter. And at one of our meetings, we invited the Orange County Department of Social Services in discussing on how we can receive the county list from them and the steps that are required for us to get that list downloaded. The OC Department of Social Service met with our district, our district at that moment, and discussed in details of the requirement, which also involved our IT team, since it has to deal with uploading to a portal and downloading data to the food service software with technology. At that time, there were some concerns from both sides with confidentiality, network concern, but after much discussions and many meetings, at the end, we all agreed that the goods outweigh some of the concern from both sides, and we were able to reach an agreement with an MOU that was provided from the Orange County Department of Social Services. It took us some time to set up the system, but once everything is in place, we were able to download the county list once a month. Adding this list on top of the CalPAT list, we were able to certify 2% more student overall. So that's huge for us. And it does help. And then we went back to the drawing board and add some more numbers on the ISP formula. And it did bring up our ISP up on some of the school sites, but not all of them. Sibling match is also another way to allow us to extend eligibility to additional children in the household that's certified, to certify them not only from the CalPET list, but also from the county list. So that was very, very, very powerful. My office staff also manually match both CalPET and county list after the system being matched electronically using the family keys with our software and try to locate more siblings using similar criteria. And part of the reason we do that because there may be some error with some of the match engine. So for example, we may have students that are related, but may have different last name, or they have step parents that have different last names, or sometimes there's use of nicknames. So we were not able to match them electronically, but we're able to match them manually using the birth date and addresses and some of the criteria. And if needed, we could always call the family to verify, making sure that that child is part of their household. Working with your site liaison is also very important and establish a good working relationship with them as well. The liaison in my school districts are great because whenever they feel there is a child at risk, they will call us and we'll work together to see if these students can be eligible to receive meals or could be directly certified. My office staff also work with IT to receive updated data from areas for any at-risk students. Now for this past year, since all meals are free, there have been some challenges not getting more data from the site. So we are working very hard, even harder, to get updates from our liaison and emphasizing how important for the child to have other additional services if we can certify these students. We'll do the same thing with the foster students, retrieve foster data from sites that may not be listed on CalPET or the county list. Next slide. Our other strategy would include our food service software also work with areas to upload enrollment data. Work closely with the site secretaries and the IT team for any newly enrolled students, especially kinders, who may be eligible for certification. So we will try to do a sibling match to see if there's any sibling attending school already that may not be qualified, that may be qualified once this kinder enrolled in our school district. We'll do the same thing with any newly enrolled students who may fall under the eligible categories and may have siblings already enrolled in our district as well. We'll do the same thing with our transfer students. Sometimes we were told that they were eligible for the meal program at the previous school and they may be certified, and we'll make phone calls to the previous district to determine how this child was qualified. You also want to look at your district, go through a geographic area, because under the McKinney-Vento definition state that any children who are living in cars, parks, public spaces, trailer parks, or camping grounds due to the lack of alternative adequate accommodations are considered living in emergency or transitional shelters. So in your district, if you have a mobile home park, RV or trailer or travel trailer or campground type of locations, technically, if you search the address to see if these students are also enrolled in your district, that may be a match. And these students can also be certified as part of your DC. And if you have some types of fairground, there may be some seasonal workers that may have children enrolled in your district. And again, using the address, phone numbers, or any of the criteria that's needed for your DC match, hopefully that we could also add to your DC numbers. Another strategy that I had learned from one of my colleagues is to take the county list and see if there's any kids that are non-school age and see if they have any siblings they may enroll in the district. And again, look at the criteria. Sometimes they may not be matched, but you can look at the birth dates and the phone number and address. And sometimes you get the nicknames or different names that being under. So there's a lot of different things that you need to look into to making sure that if they are part of the household. The last strategy that I am sharing is the double up households. They are defined as having one or more adults in addition to the head of household and spouse or a partner. These individuals are sharing the housing of other person's home due to loss of housing and economic hardship. For example, kids may live in a household that do not belong to them. Like parents and kids are living with grandparents who own a home. These kids can also be certified. And depending on your district, sometimes this is culturally accepted. And it's kind of difficult to identify these kids. I'm sure there are a lot more tips out there, that I'm not aware of, but these are the ones that have worked for us. Next slide. So with all the hard work in 2019-2020 school year, we were able to implement district-wide CEP. Our ISP went up to 50.5014%, which is almost 3% higher than when we first started back in 2017-2018. We have a small number of sites that are not qualified by itself, but we took the district-wide approach and we're able to offer CEP program for all our students. And as you hear earlier, the magic number is 62.5. And you know that I will continue to look for more ways to increase my ISP as close to the magic number as I can. Next slide. In conclusion, it does take a village to refine this process. Our success was to develop and build strong relationship with our site partners, liaison, IT team, county resources, and also being your own detectives, so to speak. So mostly don't give up, because I know we could all reach to the best potential ISP as we can. I hope there are some actionable tips that you were able to use with some of the strategy that I talk about today. Again, thank you for having me here today.
Thank you, Agnes, for highlighting all the ways that you were able to maximize your ISP. And we're going to go into the Q&A section led by Daisy Munguia Pignon.
All right, thank you, Jonelle. We had a couple